If I had to sum up today's entire video in a single word, it would be miscommunication. Miscommunication gives way to minefields, and at this point, the chaperone situation is exactly that. I have heard more think pieces and discourse surrounding this pop star than actual music, and I'm not sure what it is about Chappell specifically that seems to engender such strong reactions in people, but the reactions are certainly strong, and they seem to have peaked recently when Saturday Night Live ran a sketch referencing a few of Chappell's recent issues, and the fallout from this has been so massive, I almost don't know where to start. So we are going to talk about all of it, from Chappell's increasingly frantic interviews and TikToks that sparked all of this, to the canceled shows and subsequent fan responses that are raising one question in my mind: how exactly is Chappell planning on sustaining all of this? Because right now, I think it's gotten completely out of hand. But first, welcome. My name is D'Angelo, and I am your professor of Jurassic Orthodontics, which is a very real degree that I definitely do have. Or maybe this is just me broadcasting myself talking in my room like YouTube used to be. And in today's lecture, there's so much going on, I actually have to focus specifically on the things that have happened since my last Chappell video. At this point, the discourse on her setting boundaries with her fans has been done to death, and my stance on that has not changed. Chappell Roan was very right to set boundaries. I don't think she said anything wrong in her TikToks asking people not to bother her, and the pushback she was receiving for simply trying to stand up for herself was extremely overblown. But today, we have a whole new set of issues, kind of. I mean, it still says a lot about fan interactions and parasocial relationships, but it also makes a strong argument that as good as authenticity is, maybe publicists and PR still have a point. So I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Chappell might be the most talked about pop star right now, and part of this has been sustained through a few interviews she's done recently. Interestingly, the top one that comes up was conducted by Bowen, who's going to come back up later in a big way, because he is now under fire from some of her fans for how he referenced her on Saturday Night Live. But the interview we're looking at is from The Guardian. Chappell Roan on sexuality, superstardom, and the joy of drag. So most of this interview was standard fare, except for this small part in the byline mentioning why Chappell Roan hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris. And here's the direct quote: "I have so many issues with our government in every way," she says. "There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides." Oh, buddy, this is not a very strong start, but I'll get to that in a second. "I encourage people to use your critical thinking skills, use your vote, vote small, vote for what's going on in your city." See, now that, on the other hand, I think is a great message. The change she wants to see in the US this election year, she says instantly, is trans rights. They cannot have cis people making decisions for trans people, period. And so she's managed to give an answer here without mentioning either Vice President Harris or Trump, but I don't think the core things she's saying are wrong at all. Objectively, one should use your critical thinking skills, and I'm very glad that she's encouraging people to vote. There are way too many young people not voting. According to Forbes, half of Gen Zers don't intend to vote, and so any statement that increases voter registration among young people, I think, is a good thing. Similarly, it's obviously a good thing to reaffirm her position on trans rights. And if you use your critical thinking skills and see that she's going to use her vote not for cis people who want to make decisions for trans people, I don't think there's any conceivable universe in which somebody could interpret this as being pro-Trump. But nevertheless, people will, just you wait. However, I don't think there's problems on both sides is a good statement at all. Is it true? Yes, but we're getting into this really tricky territory where when you're in an interview, or even when you're putting out statements on the internet, if you're only thinking about what is true and what you believe, and you're not also thinking about how it can be interpreted, you're really setting yourself up for failure. There's problems on both sides is a talking point that is very popular among people who do not support leftist policies. And so I seriously think more specificity would have gone a long way. I think as you're going to see, vagueness is the main thing I think Chappell's statements often wind up suffering from. What problems are on both sides, Chappell? Are the problems on one side perhaps a little more extreme than the problems on the other? I don't know. Again, in context, the statement I think is fine, but it is so absurdly easy to interpret this incorrectly that I'm not surprised that that's exactly what happened. Chappell Roan is an embarrassment to lesbians. You can't borrow from drag aesthetics and embrace your sexuality and then pretend the party that would criminalize our happiness is the same as the one who protects it. And this tweet has like 56,000 likes, millions of views, and I find it very likely that the millions of people who may have seen it don't know what Chappell actually said, because this person quoted a quote. They're responding to this Twitter account, which only only included this part of her statement. I have so many issues with our government in every way, etc. I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. It is extremely unclear from the snippet what problems Chappell is referring to. And frankly, out of context, this just does sound really bad. The quote-unquote news and pop culture accounts that are clipping this out of context and spreading it all over the internet are definitely at fault here, in my opinion. But at the same time, media training, a little bit of practice with interviews would have alleviated this issue, because I promise you, a good PR person would never have allowed Chappell to say this in that exact wording, because a good PR person would want to avoid Time magazine articles like this. Chappell Roan's both sides non-endorsement divides the internet, because a good PR person would have realized that Chappell is employing false balance, which is a terminology in media, which Wikipedia describes thusly. False balance, known colloquially as both sidesism, is a media bias in which journalists present an issue as being more balanced between opposing viewpoints than the evidence support. Or to put it slightly more normally, why are we talking in circles about both sides when one side is objectively so much worse? Do I believe Chappell was trying to employ media fallacies to prove a point? No, because in her original statement, she immediately made it clear what she was talking about. However, we have a saying in the world of communication, and I do feel like I get to say we because I know I make a lot of jokes about my fake degrees in my videos, but I do actually have a degree in mass communication with a concentration in digital film and television production, etc. And one of the first things I was told is that the burden of communication falls on the communicator. It's your job to make sure that you're not being misunderstood. Now, there is a huge debate actually about this. You can find people saying this is a myth and communication should be a two-way thing. The audience has a responsibility to be critical about what they're hearing and be open to it, but they're not. That's the thing. Audiences they're not like this. So I am wholly unsurprised that this has happened, but Chappell, on the other hand, seems shook.
It's being completely taken out of context, per usual. There is nuance to what I say in interviews. I think it's important that people use critical thinking.
But they don't. They don't. That's the sort of thing. I feel like one would think Chappell may have realized by now. I feel like her annoyance is palpable through this TikTok, and in some ways, one could say it's justified, because who wants to be clipped out of context and made to seem like you're propping up the support of Donald Trump of all people, especially being in the LGBT community and supporting them through your art? But, and I really hope this doesn't sound like I'm coming for Chappell Roan or something like that, she does have agency in this situation, right? This is just like PR 101. You know what I mean? She could hire almost anybody and they could have gotten her out of this situation. In fact, even the fact that she's responding right now, seemingly from her living room or something in a TikTok video, is not a good idea, because as you're going to see, this didn't quite make things better.
No, I'm not voting for Trump. And yes, I will always question those in power, and I will stand up for what's right and what I believe in. I'm sorry that you fell for the clickbait.
Like, I get it, Chappell, I understand, but oh man, the clickbait that people were reacting to was still part of Chappell's statement, and we do just live in a world where people go off of headlines. And so speaking of clarity and communication, I hope my point here is clear. I'm not like a Chappell Roan hater. She has to shut up and stop sharing her opinion. I just find it so strange that she keeps winding up in these situations over and over without seemingly evaluating communication's role in all of this, because I think it's a huge part that she's missing. Why is nobody in her camp saying, hey, Chappell, hold on a second. What you want to say and how people are going to interpret it can be mulled over a little bit while preserving your authenticity? But no, instead of that, we get her reacting the very next day after that video with another one.
I just woke up, and to like people just skewing it even more. Endorsing and voting are completely different.
It's like the cycle is just painful. At this point, I'm genuinely, it hurts to witness this. So she goes into more detail here.
There is no way I can stand behind some of the left's completely transphobic and completely genocidal views. There are huge problems on both. Trump, for fucking real, but some of the that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine. And more so, every marginalized community in the world. So yeah, I'm voting for fucking Kamala.
Kamala. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. It's just comma and then la, you know? Anyway, she seems to be interpreting this as like, you guys have badgered me into revealing who I'm voting for. But you know, I think I'm going to stop mincing words for a second and be very specific. A lot of people who express hesitation to want to vote for Kamala Harris, they're doing so because they don't care if Donald Trump gets elected. It's not really a I don't support Vice President Harris thing so much as centrism as enablement for the rise of the right is a real thing that happens. And when people espouse this, you know what they sound like? This. So even though I personally don't think that's what Chappell Roan was doing, it's just absurd how avoidable this would have been if there was somebody telling her, hey, this is probably how it's going to come across. And I know people are going to jump to like, you're tone policing, you're telling women how to speak, you're trying to silence them. Communication is a job. It's just a job. It's one of your jobs when you are a pop star. Objectively, this could have been avoided by thinking harder about what was said. Not because I think her true thoughts need to be filtered, but because, again, miscommunication creates landmines.
I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now. Yes, one's obviously better than the other, but Jesus Christ, I hope you don't settle for what we have.
Now, I've been cutting out a lot of her statements because they're a little rambly, but I actually think this is the first time at the very end of her final video that she actually finally said, yes, one is obviously better than the other. When I was first starting to form my own political opinions, aka not the brainwashing I endured growing up in South Central Texas in the religious environment, oof, I think I initially did land at exactly what she's saying here. There are problems on both sides. You know what I mean? The whole establishment is corrupt. The setup of it all is just depressing and yada, 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 yada. But what I didn't realize is none of this is false, but shouldn't I be compartmentalizing that energy for after the election? Like when one of the sides I'm complaining about is fascism, is anti-LGBT, is racist, is pro-forced birth, doesn't want anybody to have autonomy over their body if they're a woman, transgender, etc. Why not put my energy first into making sure that side is not in office? And then once we have the less insane administration, that's when you can unleash all the criticism you want. Can and should, by the way. I read this online. This isn't my quote, but elect the party you want to organize under. That's what I wish somebody would have told me when I was a little bit younger, complaining about both sides. Yeah, you don't live in a fantasy land. You're not going to be presented a perfect candidate. But when one of the sides is actually death, like, for real, forcing people to give birth is deadly. Withholding gender-affirming care from people is deadly. Racism is deadly, etc. This isn't a question, it's not an opinion, I'm not exaggerating. Nuance actually is counterproductive when certain things in life are black and white. I was so annoying when I was younger. I'm glad I worked through all of this offline, but I used to take up so much space in conversations complaining about both sides, etc. But then as I've had the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of looking back over multiple election cycles, it's really clear that there is a time to worry about what's wrong with the left. And there's a time to use any and every opportunity that you can to speak out against the right and their insane plans for this country. Because presently, we do live in a two-party system. These sides are our options. That does not mean they can't be criticized, but I personally am extremely open to people criticizing her statements. I love nuance. I love, looking at both sides of most issues. But for some people, it's a privilege for there to be multiple sides when the other side of something is their continued existence. We can want it to be not that serious all we want, but that's just how it is. So basically, Chappell was coming across as an op. I don't believe she is, which I think is why she was so frustrated by all of this. But that's why media training is a thing. Somebody can have these conversations, and at the very least, she could have still said exactly what she said the way she wanted to, because it is at her discretion, but she wouldn't have been surprised when this was the reaction. That's how I feel about the Chappell Roan media training debacle. It's not even about trying to control her, but don't you think it would be better if she didn't seem constantly shocked by the scenario that keeps happening? I think Taylor Swift's recent endorsement was a great example. She was able to endorse Vice President Harris, and I personally didn't really see anybody saying, oh, you support genocide and you're against marginalized communities because you've made an endorsement. And if they were, it doesn't matter, because I don't think Taylor Swift is genocidal or against marginalized communities. A lot of people are saying endorsements don't even matter, but vote.gov tracked over 400,000 visits in the 24 hours after Taylor's endorsement. It's not even about Taylor trying to change the mind of Trump supporters. We just need people to vote. And that's why I personally feel I'm a lot more receptive to what Chappell Roan was saying than some people, because I feel like the main message was, We just need people to vote. Use your vote. Vote small. Vote for what's going on in your city. She said it 3 different ways. But the both sides thing is what people were really fixating on, even though she said it once. And it's like, Taylor's endorsement was very calm. What if Chappell doesn't identify with that? If she wanted to put out something fiery, that could have been done too, very easily. During the iHeartRadio Music Festival, Hayley Williams recently came out with this really strong statement.
Do you want to live in a dictatorship? Well, show up and vote!
She's angry. Be angry. You know what I mean? I think Chappell could have been just as angry and frustrated with the state of things and how life is for women, people of color, etc., without running into this issue. So anyways, I only bring up these examples to show tone can be preserved through media training. At the end of the day, I just don't want to sound like a man saying, Chappell needs to shut up. She's so annoying and she's so mad. Just stop talking, because I promise y'all, this is actually my hyperfixation. I care so much about her message and how it comes across, and I feel like it's so frustrating seeing this missed opportunity when I think it could have been done a lot better. But let me know what you think about all of this, because truly, this is open to interpretation. That's sort of the whole point of media studies. When people are getting millions of views, 42,000 likes on Twitter, saying, okay, so she's a Republican, got it? Yes, this is the absolute most ridiculous possible way of interpreting Chappell's statements. But what I've learned in my time doing things on the internet is, instead of finding people like this and getting mad at them, you just have to make them look even dumber. Just be even clearer, to the point where the only way to misinterpret you is malice. Basically, this annoying, unfortunate, oh, she's both sidesing and she didn't explicitly say this and she seems hesitant. Don't let them draw these circles, because people love drawing these circles. Chappell said in her video that basically, if you follow all of her statements and all of her interviews, or if you're familiar with her at all, as she says, her positions are clear, and I agree with that. But these people are not following you like that. So your only real options are ignore them, which is very much an option here, clarify in a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation, or leave them no room for misinterpretation. If you instead respond and you start internalizing all of this, and you get really thrown off by the disconnect between how people are perceiving you and who you really are, that's gonna start eroding your mental health rapidly, especially if you are already having issues. And unfortunately, those issues are manifesting and affecting her work at this point. Chappell Roan pulls the last minute plug on 2 shows. Things have gotten overwhelming. So she was scheduled to appear at the All Things Go festival. I apologize to people who have been waiting to see me in New York City and DC this weekend at All Things Go, but I am unable to perform. Things have gotten overwhelming over the past few weeks, and I am really feeling it. I feel pressures to prioritize a lot of things right now, and I need a few days to prioritize my health. I want to be present when I perform and give the best shows possible. Thank you for understanding. This isn't sustainable. This is the proof that what she's doing can't be done indefinitely, because it is going to get to you. And this polarizing air that Chappell seems to have outside of her fan base is starting to kind of affect them as well. I mean, this isn't the first time she's canceled concerts. Just 1 month prior, she pulled out of Paris and Amsterdam shows, this time due to scheduling conflicts. And honestly, she canceled on the 29th for a concert that was on the 3rd. Giving people less than a week is not very cool. Yeah, scheduling conflicts happen, but at the same time, it's very uncool to be given less than a week's notice that something you paid for was going to get canceled. She obviously refunded people, for Paris and Amsterdam. She wasn't scamming anybody. But this time, people got notice literally 1 day before. She announced pulling out of the festival on the 27th, and she was scheduled to perform on the 28th, which is how you wound up with situations like this. Not us finding out Chappell Roan canceled her All Things Go New York City appearance while already on the plane to New York City. Top 10 worst anime betrayals. Like, this is painful. For me, this is a case where multiple things are true. It's true that she should pull out of the festival instead of stand on stage suffering through a mental health crisis, singing and dancing for people. I would never advocate for that. That's just cruel and weird. But it's also true that this sucks. This just really sucks for people. And this time there were no refunds because it's a music festival. So the people attending, they do still get to see live music. But I don't see anything wrong with people expressing their disappointment. Currently 30 minutes away from Manhattan on the Amtrak. I'm glad she's prioritizing her health. But I can't help but be disappointed, especially because it's the day before. I understand her making the call she did, but it's disappointing. And it's a tough spot for Chappell to be in because now people are reconsidering seeing her in the future. I was on the fence about getting ACL tickets to see her in a few weeks, and this just confirmed I'm not going to. I'm not a music festival person anyway, but I just really wanted to see her live. I hope she takes the time she needs to take care of her mental health. Continuing to scroll, you see her own fan suggesting that Chappell gets a bigger team to tackle the PR side of fame. She should have someone else to wade through the social media firestorm. I hope she's better. I think staying off social media is necessary. There are some people in Chappell's fan base that are trying to spin this as like, you are all capitalist and you're just raging at somebody, you're being ableist, etc. Ableism is saying, forget your mental health, do your job, I paid for it. That's ugh. But none of this is coming across as hate to me, and there is a lot of it. I think this comment right here is kind of sad, if not insightful. Watching Chappell and this fandom slowly break down has just been depressing, honestly. There was such a fun and supportive and hopeful vibe here at the start of this year, and it seems very unlikely we'll be able to get that back. I really hope Chappell is able to get into a good mental space eventually and move on from this, but unless she steps back for a longer period of time, that seems unlikely as well. I bring all of this up to say, I actually do want Chappell Roan to log off. I want her to stop posting statements, etc. And it's not because I get annoyed by women being angry or asserting their boundaries. It's because I hate seeing somebody do something that seems injurious to their own mental health and then suffering through the fallout of it while a bunch of people are disappointed. Reasonable disappointment that's not rooted in hate, but just in the fact that they worked hard to save money and then it wound up kind of not going to where they thought it would. I feel empathetic because I have extreme mental health problems as well. They're not extreme now, but sometimes they border on extremity without warning. It's not something I can plan for, but I did have to learn that there were a lot of things in my life that made it easier. And stepping back from social media was probably one of the biggest ones. I want this to be easier for Chappell Roan. I feel like it can be easier than this, surely. Now, that being said, because Chappell has been put in so many situations in which people are coming at her for things that are either justified or not justified, etc. A very loud, very protective part of her fan base has gotten huge right now, and it's honestly scary to witness. So first, a very silly little bit of context. There's this baby pygmy hippo that everybody's obsessed with named Deng, and usually I don't get the hype when it comes to things online, but much like Chappell Roan, I actually get the hype when it comes to Deng. I think she's great. She's lovely. Look at her. I think regardless of how bad both sides are, Deng is the one political position we should all agree with. But much like Chappell Roan, going viral for being iconic kind of had its drawbacks. Baby pygmy hippo Deng is a TikTok star, but her keepers are worried. Literally, just like Chappell, people started violating Deng's personal space. Her caretakers are increasingly concerned for her safety, as some fans have thrown water and other objects at Deng. The zoo's director has threatened legal action. So is it funny that Deng is being harassed? Of course not. Is there humor in Chappell Roan being harassed? Not even a little bit, as far as I'm concerned. But is it funny that one of the biggest pop stars right now is going through similar issues as a baby hippo in Thailand? Well, the very popular sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live thought the answer was yes. So they put out a skit in which Bowen is basically playing Deng.
Women owe you nothing. When I'm in my enclosure, tripping over stuff, biting my trainer's knee, I am at work.
Now, I suffer from this personality defect where I am incapable of finding Saturday Night Live funny as hard as I try. Millions of people laugh along at this, and I don't, and it just makes me feel really lame, honestly.
Host!
It doesn't really do it for me, personally. That being said, despite the fact that I didn't really find this funny and I don't think it needed to be 4.5 minutes long, I personally feel like the point they were making was pretty obvious.
Your life sounds a lot like Chappell Roan's lately. Do you know Chappell Roan?
I'm 10 weeks old, Colin. Of course I know Chappell Roan.
I mean, that was kind of funny. I get it. I get it. I get it. I understand SNL. I want to love it. I've said it before. But anyway, that was the structure of the skit. The comedian Bowen, dressed as a baby hippo, basically explains, hey, stop harassing me, Deng, the baby hippo. The co-host is like, wow, that sounds like Chappell Roan. And even though this was all being said in a comedic manner, they did make a statement.
And by the way, leave her alone. Let her take as much time as she needs for her mental health. We both deserve patience and grace, so stop harassing her and stop throwing shellfish at her.
It was all just very silly in my book, in my opinion. In fact, I actually passed this video the other day when I was making a video about the trending page. I watched it at that time and I was like, oh, this is goofy. I'm sure people will find this funny. And I moved on with my life, not realizing that the discourse was going to turn into this. Something about men making fun of a young woman's struggle with fame and mental health does not sit right with me. I read that and I was like, okay, I agree. Men making fun of a young woman's struggle with fame and mental health isn't right at all. I didn't think that's what Bowen Yang was doing. I can't say whether he was or wasn't, but it just seemed like he was drawing a parallel between two related, unrelated situations while also saying, hey, stop harassing people. But that tweet had 32,000 likes. So I was like, okay, you know, it's possible I've missed a point here. Then people were saying this. Mind you, Bowen Yang interviewed Chappell not long ago and was saying how much he loves her. The lesson to learn here is that a gay man is a man before being anything else. And this tweet really popped off. And I was like, I mean, again, gay men are men for sure. They are definitely capable of misogyny. They're not exempt from it in any way. But I kind of started to just sit there like, am I missing something? I would hate to make a video where I'm like, no, all these women saying that this is wrong are wrong. But I just fundamentally feel like we must have been interpreting the skit differently. But then the biggest tweet I saw was the one where I was just like, okay, hold your horses. This person quote tweeted Bowen as Deng and said, I don't know, a lot of the chappell roan hate lately has been reminding me of the way the media and the public treated Amy Winehouse right until she passed away. Like, I know this is Twitter, and so the more extreme something is, the more clout it's gonna get. But dude, I feel like comparing Bowen Yang in this scenario to the just vitriolic media that was mocking Amy Winehouse's addiction struggles, her health issues. That is really not how I was interpreting that sketch at all. But you had Variety magazine saying SNL mocks chappell roan as Bowen Yang's Deng takes on crazy fans. And Bowen himself responded on Instagram saying, oh geez, mocks? If my personal stance and the piece aren't absolutely clear in terms of supporting her, then there it is, I guess. Everything she has ever asked for has been reasonable, and even then, we can connect it to another story about boundaries or whatever. I don't know much about the man. I just feel like in this specific case, Amy Winehouse comparisons are so extreme. They're so, they feel like an extreme overreaction to what is happening here. I can't criticize people for overreacting when they're talking about mocking women in their mental health, etc. That's not what I'm here to do. But this supercharged tone that people have taken when it comes to defending Chappell online, I feel like people are taking it more personally than even Chappell at this point, because chappell roan has not said anything. This is the person who responds to almost anything that seems to bother her. She hasn't put out a statement saying, SNL, what are you doing? I didn't find that funny, etc. And actually, as that one person pointed out, Bowen Yang did interview Chappell like just a month ago. Not only that, but chappell roan is actually set to play on SNL like very shortly. They've got her marked down for November 2nd. So I understand people's desire to speak up for Chappell because she represents a lot of things that are very important to talk about. Mental health, boundaries, etc. However, I just don't think that this energy is productive towards that end at all.
I will not be making an endorsement in this year's election.
They were making fun of chappell roan. You know, I'm not going to sit here and act oblivious, but chappell roan can be made fun of. I surely hope that that's not a hot take. And you can do that in a way without mocking her mental health, which I was not hearing in this episode whatsoever. I feel like this parasocial relationship has gotten very intense for a very vocal portion of her fan base. And I'm very wary of that because I've seen what happens in similar fan bases and it is wild. Now, with that being said, it's worth noting that despite these people getting over 100,000 likes, etc., people on Chappell's subreddit were saying the skit was funny, it cracked me up, you know you've made it when SNL writes you into a skit. I saw the sketch, it was not mocking. The nuance here is the classic SNL straddle where you're poking fun but showing your support. I don't like how some of Chappell's fans have started giving unhinged Swiftie vibes. I don't trust anybody that thinks any celebrity or artist is untouchable. I just feel like the concept of chappell roan has turned into something so odd lately. Now, that being said, on this Reddit thread, somebody said, to be honest, I don't think the skit comes across the way Bowen wanted to. It does kind of come across as condescending, and I think they just could have done something better and funnier. There are just parts where it feels like they're trying to condense multiple issues into a skit, and parts of it feel like they're punching down. And this person says, you can't blame the audience for misinterpreting your intentions when the bit didn't land. It was just a bad sketch. So my very same criticism for Chappell's statements does apply here. The onus of communication falls on SNL. I mean, in some ways, they did have to know this would happen, right? I think they could have made all the points they were trying to make in probably a tighter sketch that worked a little better. But I find criticism like that to be a lot more sensible than this is literally a repeat of Amy Winehouse and you are mocking her mental health, etc. But anyway, to my credit, as much as Chappell Roan gets discussed, I have only ever put her in the title and thumbnail one other time. And you know what? I am gonna name this video Chappell Roan is speedrunning the end of her career, because if she continues on her current path, this can't last. Obviously, her fan base is getting out of hand, things are affecting her mental health, etc. But this is actually my first career-ending speedrun video where I actually genuinely think she can just stop. I really see a way for her to turn this around by inviting some people on board, linking up with a PR firm, you know what I mean? You know how many people are probably champing at the bit to be Chappell Roan's publicist? Put that on your resume and you'll be booked for the rest of your life. But yeah, I'm sure there will be more Chappell Roan updates until that happens, and I'm not going to cover them all because God, there is only so much to say after all. But nevertheless, I still thought it would be interesting to talk about. But that's my take on the situation. Dave's take on the situation is that maybe Chappell wouldn't have had to deal with all of this if she would just release the music video for Good Luck Babe. But I'm of course excited to hear your take. I mean, this is the part of the video where a layman would ask you to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. But I will ask you to enroll, evaluate the video, and submit your feedback. Because I'm of course running a 100% completely, totally, all the way, okay, maybe not really, somewhat unaccredited university. Probably. Just ask anybody in the student body and they'll confirm it for you. We're totally legit. And as for me, whether you'll see me in 24 hours or 24 months is honestly anyone's guess, but until then, thanks for watching. Your homework for today is to not cause immediate controversy. Don't do any interviews, don't break your side, just chill.